Hello, and welcome to a conversation on the Daily Bern. I'm your host, Eric Miller, joined today by an awesome progressive from a deeply red state, Christina Haswood from Kansas. How you doing, Christina?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing well. It's a real treat to chat with you. I think I first became aware of your name. There were articles around, I guess, when the primary about young Indigenous women winning the races. I think 4 out of 4, I guess, within that state, right? So yeah, I looked into you, and boy, you handily won your race. Like it was you and two opponents that look like me, right? And you beat them like 70% in Kansas. Like how? I don't, I want to cover a lot of ground with you, but how did that happen? How were you able to do that?
Yeah, my opponents, we were all qualified to be here. We all love our community. It was really great to see all three of us come out of a pandemic to run for our community. And that to me was extremely inspiring. But I was actually approached by the Native American of Kansas Democratic Caucus Chair. When our current representative, Eileen Horn, decided not to seek re-election. She was such a great representative for our community, and we're all really sad to see her go.
Right.
But she has endorsed me to take her seat. And I think it was just time for this type of leadership, and being a 26, having a young voice in there. In my district, Native Americans are third highest on the race of demographics. So that's a really high number. And not only in my district, we have 2 universities. We have Haskell and Nations University and Baker University. And I was actually alumni of Haskell and Nations University. And I think I counted about 10 or 11 family members who have gone through Haskell. So it's kind of like a family tradition. But, I'm born and raised in Lawrence, the District 10. I was actually raised in District 10. And I think it's my personal upbringing where, when I was growing up, my mom was on WIC. We were on Section 8 housing, one of the apartment housings in the district, reduced lunch in times where my dad got furloughed and between jobs. Even I'm Navajo from the Navajo Nation, and we even had tribal school clothing programs at the time where they would mail clothes like winter jackets, jeans, and shoes. So I have this, I guess people like to say unique experience, but I think it's not unique at all. I think the only unique part is that I'm Navajo off my reservation in Kansas. That takes people a little double take. And, how did I win my race? I really just shared my passion, and the thing that convinced me to run, because there was a sense of, like, I don't know if I can do this. They were like, at the end of the day, you're going to get out there and you're going to show your community your passion and how much you love them. And not only you're going to do that, but you pretty much have nothing to lose if you're going to, pour your heart into the race. And that's exactly what I did. And I'm really proud of myself, just from the beginning of the campaign to now, and my team that believed in me. I don't have an extensive political or campaign background, so I'm pretty much coming out from the citizens' perspective. This is a civilian's legislative position, and I'm pretty much coming straight from that as well. So I think we really just motivated and mobilized a lot of people, and I'm just so proud of us.
Right on. Yeah, awesome, amazing. So there isn't a Republican challenger. So the general election is November 3rd. So Christina's been amazing heretofore, but make sure that you support her. Haswoodforkansas.com. I'm sure you could use donations. I'm sure you could still use volunteers, all of that stuff. And I'll mention that again, but it's November 3rd. So if you're in, I'll show the district too, in Kansas, Lawrence area, District 10. I want to ask about a lot of, first off, I had Christina Miller on last week, and she's a House race in Oregon, kind of a similar dynamic to yours. And I was asking her about institutional racism, and it's an interesting thing. It's not something everyone experiences, and particularly, we saw the Jacob Blake shooting just in the last 24 hours, right? And it, once again raises all those questions about qualified immunity and things like that. So, what are your thoughts on, those types of things, qualified immunity, criminal justice reform? And I'm curious if you can frame it, we've seen far too many, Jacob Blakes, but, there's also institutional racism, obviously, going back to day one for Indigenous people. Can you talk about that a little bit as well?
Of course, first of all, Black Lives Matter now more than ever, where we're seeing, and my community here in Lawrence, we've had several demonstrations for our criminal justice systems and those who are being disproportionately affected. And the attack on, Jacob Blake was extremely disgusting. And it's infuriating to see that this is being the norm. This has been summer that's been keep on happening, and it's traumatizing to see for young Black men and women on social media. I saw multiple posts saying, don't reshare that post because that's instilling trauma into the youth that are going to come and see this is what's happening in their community. And I really thought about that too, because being an Indigenous person, this institutional systemic racism has dated back, when the United States government had come into our lands and, made these treaties with us, and we didn't really know the impacts of it. And a lot of times they created genocide so we could go into these treaties with them. And there's all these history of trying to eliminate natives across the country. And, being Navajo, from the Navajo Nation, we had the long walk, and that was extremely devastating. And the boarding school era too, not only for the American Indians, Indigenous peoples here in North America or the United States, but also in Canada as well. We share a lot of that trauma. And then we have the current trauma of missing and murdered Indigenous women's. And I'm lucky enough to work on Missing and Murdered Indigenous Peoples project, where we branched out to the urban area and looked at not only, just women and girls of this movement, but on Navajo Nation, we have a lot of men and young men too being taken and stolen and still not found. And you can go on, the federal government has this nameus.gov, and it's this database system where you can go and report your loved one missing and see if there's any progress up on it. It's extremely I work with caution, because sometimes they'll find deceased people, and you can see if you can find your relative. So it's just this cycle that happened before, and I think we haven't done a lot of healing yet or history taught. And that's one of my things too, is when I got into policy and politics, or not really much, policy and politics. I come from a background of American Indian history or health policy. And I've even gone to DC and meet with my representatives. And I've knocked on their door, and I set up meetings with, their staffers. And they really, especially with my congressman, Kansas has 4 federally recognized tribes. And I have not seen him attend, any tribal event or any motion to tribes. So I really wanted to ask, okay, what's going on, and do you need help? And then again, I had to start off with a history lesson.
Right.
You get like 30 minutes with these staffers, and the first 15, 20 minutes is just giving a history lesson on what happened back then and then what's currently happening now. And that has played this topic of, American Indian policy, federal policy. We're always stuck in the past. And you see this not only in healthcare, but something like the mascot issue, where, the chiefs want to play up with headdresses and war paint, and we can't even take something like that seems to be a change in the name. People just don't get it, and it's extremely frustrating just to see that we're always painted in the past. And I was listening to a podcast, All Our Relations, and they were talking about it in the art context of, when you go to a museum, where do you see natives? You always see them next to rocks and fossils and like a natural history museum, you always see their old jewelry. You don't really see natives artwork in a contemporary, like the Met Gala, as they use an example. So it's just, we're not really educating ourselves on these issues, and it really sets us back, of our progress. And, we can look that in the education systems, and look at other marginalized peoples whose history hasn't been told in the most transparent context. It's all been sugar-coated.
Yeah. So did you, I mean, there's a lot there. Like there's no silver bullet to fix all of that. It's just generational change, right? It's awareness. It's fighting the fight consistently across the board, right? And you talk about going to speak to your congressman in DC. I assume a Republican, and I assume, like you said, the outreach isn't there because from his perspective, A, he's not a corporate donor, you're not corporate donors, and B, generally he's probably been conditioned that, indigenous people aren't going to vote for him. So he doesn't really, what's the point, right? From his perspective. And I have no idea how you would even begin to overcome that. So I admire you going and knocking on the door and getting some face time and, fighting the fight and running and winning the seat, hopefully in November, presumably.
Yeah. What I learned about federal policy, coming from a advocacy level, we're always told that American Indian policy is nonpartisan or bipartisan work. So I've been trained in that way of, we have to make agreements and we have to, come together for this. And I plan on keeping that because I do have constituents who are of both parties and everything in between. And I just genuinely want to help my people, my local community, to advance the issues that they feel like their voices aren't heard, because, I know what it feels like to have my voice not heard.
Yeah. And, I don't mean just to like blow smoke your way or like compliment you, to an excessive degree, but, like we had progressive, we had Bernie Sanders, right? Bernie Sanders begets AOC, and then AOC inspires the next, possibly you, right? And then you inspire the next, like, your age, your identity is inspiring the next wave of, young leaders. So I think that's absolutely incredible. And I don't want to just focus on that, but it's obviously a huge part of who you are and all that stuff. But, your background, professionally speaking or educationally speaking, is in public health, right? Mm-hmm. And you have your master's degree. And I want to ask about, coronavirus, Medicaid expansion in your state. But, my first question is, and again, I'm framing it as a compliment because I mean it sincerely, right? You just earned a master's degree. I'm going to assume, you don't have to answer the question, I'm going to assume you have a mountain of debt and you're taking a crazy pay cut to take a state house seat in Kansas. How's that working out for you?
I try to forget about the debt. I'm probably about $70,000 in debt.
Nice.
And that's from undergrad, actually. When I was I started my college career at Haskell Nations University, and that's all Native American university run by the federal government, and that's trying to uphold the treaty right of Natives sacrificing their land, our ancestors, through genocide, and those who survived for us to even be here. We are, the prayers of our ancestors. That's part of the treaty right of education. And then on the healthcare side, we have Indian Health Services as part of trying to uphold the treaty right of our healthcare. And then I went to undergrad at Arizona State University after I got my Associates of Science in Community Health. At first, I thought I wanted to be a nurse, but I failed anatomy and physiology 1 and 2 about 6 times altogether. So I was like, don't put me in medical school or nursing school. And unfortunately, I needed it for my bachelor's of science degree. But, I really pushed through it. And, if you're struggling with school too, it gets better. You just really have to discipline yourself, because that's what I did. But yeah, I was the first in my family to go to a big state college, and we did everything wrong my first semester. Like I bought my books full price at the bookstore. Yeah, when you get a loan for college, they always give it a couple extra thousand, and we just accepted it. We didn't know we could edit it to what I really needed, or half of what I needed. And yeah, we pretty much did everything wrong, but we finally kind of started to learn the ropes of it. But luckily, when I went to the University of Kansas Medical Center, that's when I came back home. I was given like a scholarship with the Center for American Indian Community Health, which I've done an undergrad and a graduate research internship with them for the summer. And that's where I really got to not only, and I've been in higher education for a total of 8 years. For undergraduate, it took me 6 years to complete. So there's really, the 4 years that people always say that doesn't matter. You can go, you can start now and then come back, later, or you can start when you're 50. I really enjoy, I think grad school actually showed me that, where you have maybe some older students in your classroom and they have the real experience of times that we talk about in the textbook. And they can say, oh, this is what happened in the community at this time. And then they go, oh, no, you guys were only like 10. But I really enjoy those type of experiences. And yeah, I've done about 8 or 9 internships, and they've all been at some type of government level, because I knew when nursing didn't work out for me that I was going into public health. And that really sparked my interest with the summer research enhancement program at Dinek College in Saline, Arizona, which is on my reservation. And I had an externship at Navajo Nation Epidemiology Center. And this is where I got exposed to suicide in adolescents. And we looked at the Youth Risk Behavioral Survey on the YRBS surveys. That was the long surveys that you take in high school. And I really just felt a strong connection to suicide. Because, back when I was earlier years, I've gone through some dark times, and, I always felt like that stigma. You can't really talk about what's stressing you or what's keeping you up at night. And I really want to be a part of that solution of breaking the stigma, because, one life loss is one too many. And it's just, I just really want to help in that manner. So that's always been like my research interests. But when I got into health policy is when I was starting to learn about the Indian Improvement Healthcare Acts, and learning about like the Snyder Act. And when they would go around reservations saying, oh, their health is not as great, and they report it back to Congress, and Congress is like, okay, on to the next thing. So it feels like that's still happening, even though that happened, 50 or so years ago. Nothing much has improved. And we can see that to other marginalized communities. But yeah, I have experience from local government to state government to federal government, tribal government, nonprofit, federal level, both on reservation and off reservation, in the Southwest, in Kansas, South Dakota, and DC. So I take each experience with me, and, just really probably in the past year or so, I kind of took that a step further into advocacy level, where I would go to a conference and learn how to, the lobby days in DC, and really try to understand, how do you even get into these? How do you get at the table that everyone talks about?
Right.
I talk to people who supposedly are at the table, but how do I get there? And that was pretty much kind of my shift into, instead of just being a researcher and an advocate, I always thought, I really wish we had somebody who knew our history, or even visit a reservation or my reservation. Who can be that person? So you start looking around and you're like, oh, maybe this person because they care about, foster care. Maybe this person because they are a teacher. But you never really look at yourself. And I think representation really matters, because it wasn't until, I saw Congresswoman Deb Haaland and Therese Davids win their seat. I always thought that us natives in Kansas didn't belong in politics.
Right.
I just looked at, the people that represent me. They don't look like me. They didn't come from a background like me. But And then even at the local level, we're really put into reality and perspective as there's another Native American representative, Representative Ponkawee Victors in Wichita, and she was introducing a missing and murdered Indigenous women's bill back in February. And I caught wind of she was having a press conference. And, I think I might have skipped class that morning. I thought I was sick at work. Because, I wanted to witness what this actually looked like. I'm tired of reading it in the paper. I'm tired of reading in textbooks of the process, watching on YouTube. I want to sit right there and see this happen in action. This is history in the making. And then luckily when I went there, she asked all of us to wear red because that's the color of spreading the awareness of missing and Indigenous women. So that's when I like to do like a modern Navajo outfit. And we all stood behind her while she gave her speech on introducing this bill. And I was just like, wow, I worked on this, last summer. And I told her, I was like, if you ever need help, let me know. Because I worked on this last summer. I wrote a literature review on it for a nonprofit level that they're, eventually going to use to advocate to Congress. Like, let me know. And, the next time that she reached out to me, she was encouraging me to run for a state representative.
Right on.
That happened real quick.
So now she has backup. She has another vote at least, right? So that's a state level bill, right? That's the Indigenous Peoples Missing Persons bill.
Yeah. Unfortunately, because of COVID-19 and how that happened with cutting the legislative session short, and COVID-19 just pretty much took over our communities. I think it died in one of the committees, but right. I'm looking forward to bringing it back when I get elected in.
Right on. I want to actually pull up the map of your district just to demonstrate something real quick, because I think it's inspirational, right? Not to lay it on too thick, but obviously Kansas is a deeply red state. We can see how this is the reddest of red, and there's just a few speckles of blue districts right here. I think if my mouse is correct, this is the one. This is Kansas 10. This is incumbent right here, right? So. Right. So how, what's the fight look like at the state level? Like, obviously you're way outnumbered, right? What's, like I think there's a Medicaid expansion bill in Kansas, the Indigenous People Missing bill that you mentioned. Like, what's the fight going to look like at the state level, being just one of a few blue representatives, if you will?
I know it's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
But I really think just the way that I was taught about policy, to come in with the respect for both parties, because you need both parties to pass a bill. Maybe not as needed much in Kansas, well, they're the majority of the state, but I really believe that these issues, especially the expanding Medicaid, has been only exposed to the disparities that this could help. And they did have an opportunity in one of their special sessions, in June, to expand Medicaid, but they decided not to because they wanted to put like an abortion amendment to it. And it was just completely disheartening to see that giving health insurance to people during a pandemic and just trying to make into something else. I respect that choice of reproductive rights, but us women can make decisions for our own body. And coming from myself, with the federal government being my health care provider in the Indian Health Services, it's not fun just having that extra entity saying what you can and cannot do with your body. And I know it's not going to be easy, but I look forward to creating relationships and just really sit down with people and see where their perspectives are, but also putting in the effort of getting more Democrats elected into the Kansas State House. With my certain situation of running unopposed and for the general, that's something I really want to be a part of and help them get elected in.
Right on. Yeah, like you said, I didn't remember her name, but the current representative,
Mhm.
now she has a teammate, if you will. Now she has a partner in crime, a friend, an ally, right?
Mhm.
And that's those toeholds make a massive difference. Like you said, Sharice Davids, right? I think that was originally a red seat. That's the one
Mhm.
Brent Welder ran for, right? Yeah. Um, so let me ask you, again, just kind of focusing through the lens of your public health background, about Medicaid expansion. Obviously, you're for that. I think it's called Can Care. I'm assuming, rural areas in Kansas have hospitals shutting down because we have the for-profit system. The coronavirus response has probably been disproportionate to your communities. Can you just talk about, some of those issues in terms of, public health, hospitals closing, coronavirus response? What's your perspective, and what would you do about that?
The issue of rural hospitals closing not only brings the urgency of a population that's already not punishable in resources for their health care. Not only that is one of the biggest things, but one of I think people don't realize is that hospitals bring in they bring in jobs. When you bring in nurses and healthcare physicians, even to the staff of custodians or just a receptionist, they got to eat somewhere. They got to live close nearby. So not only does that boost jobs, but the local economy of a city. So that during when this is all happening, it's really concerning. And what I really want to do is be that big voice and work with organizations. I have a great list of endorsements from statewide organizations and current state legislatures who are going to help me, be this big, loud voice. And I have a lot of youth endorsements as well, such as the Sunrise Moon of Lawrence, Kansas, who
Yeah,
have been a big powerhouse for my campaign.
awesome.
I look forward with them to help create this change, and just really get to people that we need to expand Medicaid. And I really want to be the part of solution of breaking that relationship of having a job in healthcare. I
Right.
think healthcare is a human right, and there's just too many stories of people living too far away from their hospital or their clinic, or telemedicine. We have that now, but what about the broadband issue of the rural Kansans? And we see that now more than ever when people are having to work from home, and when schools are doing online schooling. There's so many people on the internet with making sure that you have a wide enough bandwidth.
Right.
Not only with that, but farmers and ranchers who have tractors and these technology systems need to, it has advanced so much that they have to update their systems to their tractors and their sprinklers. They need internet and a good connection of internet to do that, to, produce their produce and continue their way of life.
Right on. Um, Yeah, I want to pull up just kind of a little profile slide I made of your platform. I think we kind of hit on much of this. The one that I was curious about, Medicaid expansion, climate change. You mentioned Sunrise Movement. This cut food sales tax. That was quite a specific thing. Can you talk about what that means? It's not an issue that gets widely discussed.
Yeah, so Kansas has a really high food sales tax, and it's called a regressive tax, I believe. I'm not a expert in that, but I invite anybody who is an expert to educate me on more of these economic tax systems. Um, but to my understanding, that because of the high food sales tax, it more impacts lower income communities and people who, are of the poverty line or underneath the poverty line, because when you have a budget of maybe $500 a week to feed your family of four or more, that extra tax system, that less money in your pocket, is going to be more excruciating than someone who makes, has a $2,000 a week budget. They can afford that extra expense. And looking at my district too, my district is not the most, I guess, resource plentiful or much of a eye for new developments.
Mm,
Right across on the other side of Lawrence, that's where we have like a Sprouts, and we have a grocery store called Hy-Vee. That's kind of more of a scaly type of, so those type of like industries, and like the nice steakhouse in town is all the way on the other side of town. Really shows the disproportionate in my district. But even like in Baldwin City, they're doing really well, and I'm so excited for them, and they have such a really great community and atmosphere, and small business too are one of the important things in that community that I am a big supporter of, especially during these hard times.
Right on. Yeah, I mean, you said you didn't know what a regressive tax meant, and then you just went ahead and defined it. And, so you totally know, right? If you make $100 and the tax is 10%, it hurts you more than if you make $1,000 and the tax is 10%. That's regressive, basically, as I understand it. So, yeah. And you're studious. So anything that you don't know, you'll jump in both feet. I have no doubt about that. We've hit on a few of the bills. I was talking to someone running for a House seat in Pennsylvania, and on her website, she explicitly went through all the bills that are currently in the legislature and where she would stand on them, right? She read them all, and she said, I'm for this one, I'm against that one. I'm for this one, I'm against that one. That might be something, just to prepare yourself, right? So day one, you hit the ground running, right? That would be, certainly a beneficial thing. And you obviously you have a progressive platform. How is, you said Sunrise Movement was a big advocate. How in a deeply red state, oftentimes I would think it would be challenging because they've been programmed and pumped to just reject things like Green New Deal just because of the term or whatever, right? They've been propagandized, right? But it affects them. You talked about produce farmers, right? So their yield is going to be less because they have shorter seasons or more drought or whatever. So how did Sunrise Movement help your campaign, and how can you expand that little blue footprint in terms of the Green New Deal out to some of those redder areas of your state? It's a loaded question.
That's a great question. I think just the group of the Sunrise they have been such a great positive influence in my life and my campaign, and they have a great set of morals and deals that I believe in, and not only will it be great for my district, but it also when I always think of policies and just these new ideas, I always think about, would this have helped me when I was younger? And thinking about my upbringing and my current situation, like $70,000 in student loan debt. I made $9,000 as a graduate research assistant last year, and I survived grad school on scholarship money, basically. I'm still pretty much a part of this community of what these policies are going to do to improve my life. So it's really not only thinking about what's best for the district, but it's personally impacting me as well. I mean, I look at other issues too, like the unemployment and furlough issues. My dad has been furloughed for the entire month of August. So I'm not, when I really think of what's best for the community, I look at myself. But these, I guess, progressive ideas, I think it's just being a good human and looking out for your neighbors. And that's pretty much what I grew up with in my culture. And we always just take care of each other. And we always look at, okay, what can I do for this person so we can bring it up? I'm all about equity. If one person is falling behind, we all need to be together in this moving forward, this movement of moving forward. And, that's what we're seeing now. And I just really want to be that big, loud voice. And Sunrise Movement has been helping me be that big, loud voice. And, involving the youth too. They're an organization built up of high school and young college kids. They're the future of our country. They're the future of the state. They're only about 5 or so years younger than I am. And I really hope that, not only they do a great job at protesting and sitting in and keeping our elected officials accountable. They kept me accountable too a few times. I'm just so proud of them, and I hope, that they always, when they go into their adulthood, take that extra step too and keep up this good work, because we really need it, not only for our state but as our country as well.
Yeah, and the world in that case, right? Yeah, here, here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love what you said about just being a good human, right? So imagine we had a representative government that was all people that just wanted to be good humans like that, and bribery wasn't part of it, and corruption wasn't part of it, and careerism and all that stuff. So yeah, thank you for saying that, and thank you for running, and thank you for taking the pay cut for the people. That's an amazing thing. So,
It's not a pay cut for me, but
right. Well, pay cut for you to benefit the people is what I'm saying, right? So, yeah, I think it's amazing. So, the election is November 3rd. Christina could still use your vote. She could still use donations. And it's, I hope your election obviously happens, but then I hope it also ripples, right? You talk about the Sunrise Movement, they're just a few years younger than you. Maybe some of them are inspired by your success, right? By your trouncing your two opponents in the primary, right? And maybe some of those, younger folks run, and then we sort of pick up momentum. So, on behalf of progressives, congratulations on getting through the primary. And, I can't wait to see where you take it from here. Once you get into the Kansas State House and hopefully beyond. The website, again, I'm going to say is haswoodforkansas.com. So please go and donate if you can. Grassroots, I'm assuming you don't take like giant blank checks from Lockheed Martin and BP and so forth. Right. So
no, you gotta get that check right.
Right. So Christina is a grassroots campaign, as all my guests are. So please support her if you can. And yeah, November 3rd, Kansas 10th. Boy, any other issues, like frontline issues? I guess voter suppression might be a real one, right? So we want to make sure, particularly on reservations and stuff. I know there was a lot of shenanigans in 2018 on that. You're moving. Is there anything you
charge my laptop?
No, okay.
Yeah.
Anything you want to say, just informationally, that people ought to know about, how to vote in your district on November 3rd? Is there any shenanigans happening, anything like that you know of?
Yeah. So how to vote. We're really emphasizing on the voting plan, and making sure that you have a plan to vote, as we see there's a lot of obstacles coming our way. And we really want to, in my district too, one of the things is that we had a ballot box for our county, and there wasn't a ballot box in Baldwin City, which is in my district. So that's one of the big things that I'm going to be bugging our local county to put in. But then also with the pandemic, I strongly encouraged a lot of people to vote by mail and filling out their advanced ballots. I even did a TikTok on how to request your advanced ballots, not only trying to engage the young people, but just really show in a really quick, less 60 seconds on, this is, if you plan well, it could run smoothly. And I really just encourage everyone to educate yourself on the candidates as well. And we did a lot of forms. I guess not a lot, but they were all recorded. So I just encourage everyone to take the time to watch it. And, you can even Google my name, and there's plenty of articles that come up. But if there's something that you see that they haven't talked about, make sure you reach out to them, because you really want to keep these people, elected leaders, accountable. You want to let them know that you're watching. And, you want them to succeed as well, of the candidate of your choice, or just all of them, because they're going to represent yourself. So, always keep in constant communication with them.
Hear, hear. Right on. Awesome. Yeah. So, make sure you sort out your voting plan. Again, November 3rd, Kansas 10th, haswoodforkansas.com. I'd love to have you back on, Christina. Once you win, and hear about your fight. I can't wait to see what you do in Kansas State House, like I said, and beyond. So yeah, and thank you for running. Thank you for picking up the seat or holding this seat. It's very inspiring. And thanks for taking some time.
If anyone has any questions about just running as a young person, as a female, as a woman of color, as a young woman of color, feel free to message me. I will DM you back. But yeah, next time I'll make sure my laptop is charged.
No worries. Maybe I'll have you back on and we can talk about specifically that, how to run as a young woman of color. I'd love to get in there with you.
Yeah, we need more. With the 100th anniversary of women's suffrages, and really looking at each woman of color's journey, fight. Actually, it was a fight. For us, us natives, we didn't get citizenship till 1924. That's less than 100 years ago, and
yeah, it's embarrassing. Yep. Well, thank you, Christina. I look forward to speaking to you again, and thanks for running. Have a good evening.
Thanks. Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye.